Hello, and thank you for joining us. Of course, I am Ellie, and this is another one of our Making Love Real segments. And it is an honor and a pleasure to be here with a colleague, a friend of mine, somebody who, even though she is a friend, I would hope that she would just adopt me and, all of those great things, because she is somebody that is just an inspiration to be around. And so she is joining us today. This mysterious she is Dawn Demps. Dawn is currently a Ph.D. candidate through the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College at Arizona State University. And, I just disappeared off the screen. Sorry about that. And she is also an American Association of University Women Fellow and a fellow with the ASU Dissertation Completion Fellow. And so, Dawn, I really want to take this opportunity to welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us. And tell us. Yeah, absolutely. And so our Making Love Real segment with the Beatitudes Church is really an opportunity for us to focus on members beyond the church walls, members of the congregation, and really looking at the diverse ways in which all of us can engage in life in a very kind and loving way. And when I had an opportunity to offer a recommendation, you immediately came to mind, in particular for the work that you do for our Black, Brown, and Indigenous children in education and even beyond education's walls. So with that, I would love for you to tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit more about what are you studying? What is your dissertation about? And then I'll ask some more questions.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
I'm honored that you even asked. She said a lot. So I'm from Fulton, Michigan. And so a lot of my organizing and facilitation and youth programming and family program experience comes from back home when I was in Flint, Michigan. I dropped out of high school when I was 16 and left home like shortly thereafter. And so I was in a whole bunch of craziness that I shouldn't have been in, right? But the one thing I always had was a love for working with kids, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher, no matter what. So I used a lot of my personal experiences to inform the work I did with community. So of course I started with young people, with children, with youth. I'm also an artist, so I incorporated a lot of art, whether it be poetry or music, had choirs and all this other type of stuff, sign dance and all these things to incorporate into a program that I had called Eyes on the Prize. And with my work with young people, it kind of expanded how I thought about loving community, since we're talking about that, right? Like I said, I always wanted to be a teacher, but what I came to realize is that you can't love the child and not love the family, right? And so that's when a lot of my work that I was doing back home in Flint kind of expanded, and Eyes on the Prize went beyond just doing youth programming to a lot of family-oriented things. We got into facilitation. We had partnerships with another organization that I was the executive director of for a little while, called Leadership Development and Interethnic Relations. And that is out of California and out of some of the racial unrest that was happening there at the time. And really it was about putting people in spaces that probably normally wouldn't be in spaces together and having them talk about all of the isms, all of racism, sexism, right, ethnocentrism, like all of the things. And so I ended up incorporating a lot of kind of that ideology into my youth program and family program and community program work. And so that's really what has informed what I do. I decided to get a PhD, and a few things happened at the same time. At this point, I'm a mommy, right? And I had 3 kids. I always wanted to get my Ph.D., but then they poisoned the water at Flint. And I tell everybody that. And that really kind of like set me over the edge, because all of my community work, I had always felt like I could somehow make sure that at this point, my kids weren't okay anymore, right? They couldn't drink the water out of the sink. And it was just a really hard time there. And I was working with some of the organizers. I in no way was a lead organizer on the water crisis. I just worked and partnered with other people who were like Naira Sharif. I don't know if you guys saw the movie, but Jill Scott played her. And she's another person who like really informed a lot of my community organizing work and just kind of following what they did. But at the same time, I just was like, now is the time for me to go do what it is I said I wanted to finish doing. And I had been discouraged before, you know, with personal friends and things like that. Like, you didn't even graduate from high school. How did you get into college? How did you do this? And so I got all the degrees, you know, the bachelor's, master's. And I was like, now it's time to do it. Let's go. Came out to Arizona. My mom lived in Arizona at the time. Came out to Arizona State and visited and met with some of the professors who I'd done research on that were doing work. Not really community work per se, some of them were, but work that I felt could strengthen my community work. Because I work with young people and with families, to me, schools, it was all about schools, because I wanted to be a teacher. And then once I got into school, I realized teachers don't really have a lot of power, and that the issues in schools go way back further before we even get to the teachers and into the classroom. And so I really wanted to tackle and deal with some of those things. And so some of the professors I met here, Dr. Keon McGuire, Dr. Melody Bertrand, Dr. Carrie Sampson, they were doing like really awesome work. And I was just really encouraged, and I applied and I got in. And so that's how I ended up here. And so my dissertation is I am following a group of mothers who are grassroots organizers. They are all Black mothers, all Black women, and they are fighting the school to prison pipeline. So even though I left home, I'm still, my heart is in organizing and youth outreach and youth programming. And so I found a way to incorporate like what my first love is really into my dissertation work. So I tell everybody that my community work informs my academic work, not the other way around. My academic work is not informed, you know. I looked at getting a PhD as strengthening the community work that I do.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. And you know, what's crazy is it'll be great to visit you again when you are a tenured professor, and hopefully you're able to change the system, the academic system that does not reward the community work, right? And I think it's really, really powerful that you have always kept that as your focus, right? This is just a way in which to build the work that I'm already doing, and that's fantastic. So thank you. There's definitely a lot I want to talk about that you just shared, but first I want to ask, if I may, what is your spiritual or faith or religious upbringing? And if you feel comfortable, how would you identify now?
Right. So I came up with both Baptist and Catholic upbringing. I was baptized in both. I went through the sacraments, right? I went to catechism. I did all of that in terms of, you know, being Catholic. I went to a Catholic high school. I had a really awesome Catholic teacher at the high school who taught the history of Catholicism. And his name escapes me, and I don't know if I should even say it, because some of the things he said in the class were, I would imagine, so controversial. I was like, do they know that you're telling us this? Do they know that you're telling us that we used to pay for forgiveness, right, as Catholics? And so to me, that stuff was just like so just scintillating, and oh my God, that's crazy. So that class, and I think his name was Mr. Ross now that I think about it, But that class, I loved history already. And so that class made me go like deeper into history, not just of Catholicism, but of religion in general. And just kind of seeing how religion has been used for a tool of good. And it has been, and it can be, right? We have the Mother Teresas of the world. We have people who are informed by this whole idea of agape love and who truly believe that, right? But at the same time, we have people who use religion to colonize people and to use it as an excuse for the colonization, and to say somehow that this is God's providence, that you should have this land or whatever. And so that left a sour taste in my mouth, in addition to the ways that you do see people act. And I know everyone says that, like, oh, the people in the church are perfect. And they're not, because they're people. But I went to get my master's and I went to a Catholic college. I went to Marygrove College, which is a Catholic college in Detroit. And I had another teacher who went into the history piece of Catholicism and really got into the philosophies, right, of goodness, right, and talks about the veil of ignorance, right, and what that means to make decisions as if you weren't who you are. Imagine you didn't know who you were coming into the world. Then what type of world would you create? Would you create a world that was racist against Black people? You don't know if you're going to be Black. Would you create a world that's sexist against women? You don't know if you're going to be a woman. Would you create a world where we don't have tools for people who may face a disability? You don't know if you'll be born with a disability. So like the philosophy of some of those classes, again, really pushed me further in my thinking. And I consider myself to be spiritual. And I dropped the religious part because to me, unfortunately, the way we have used religion has been very toxic. And this idea that we create rules, this idea that someone has been the voice of God and created the text of God, however we imagine God, right? Does that make this coercion to goodness, is that really being a good person? This idea that if you're not good, you'll go to hell. Is that really a good person? Or are there really good people, the people who are good because they really believe you should treat people well? And so I really don't identify as Catholic or Baptist anymore, but I definitely identify as spiritual. I still talk to God, and God can look a different way depending on how I'm feeling that day. So yeah.
I love it. So, and thank you for being willing to answer that question. I know that sometimes is a difficult question, especially if you're interviewing with a group that's from a church, right? So, and that's what's great about the Beatitudes Church is really believing that there's no one way to believe. There's no one way to show love and to make it real and all of that. And so, yeah, so thank you for that. Do you, I'm really negotiating. Well, I will say this. If you are a member of our community watching this interview during our service, I hope that you enjoy the rest of the service. And if you're interested in more of this interview, please check out what we're going to be talking about moving forward on our YouTube and our Facebook page and all of our social media sites. So we'll end it now with Dawn for the church service, but we will join again if you join us in YouTube post the service to hear more of the interview with Dawn. So thank you so much.
Thank you.